I'm sure married life shouldn't be so difficult, but marriage to Joanna was more difficult than I could have imagined. The grumbling and complaining just seemed endless. Everything I did was wrong. Before we started dating, I had many hobbies, mainly active recreation and sports, as well as cycling and playing football. Over the years, this all faded away, with Joe saying that we couldn't afford it, that we didn't have time, or that she had ordered something else for the same day. I lost contact with more and more friends and did not participate in trips and events. I was so infatuated with Joe that it took me years to realize what was happening, and it was only when I looked back after a few beers that I realized how much I had missed. Why marry someone if they are so perfect, and then try to change them? Even my friends and family became problems. Not educated enough, drinking too much, or being too loud and rude to Joe's sensibilities. She seemed to take pride in her ability to control our lives and everything that happened in it. There is no end to it. Earn more, work even more, make lists of tasks. All this has become a habit for her. When we first started dating, she was caring, attentive, and quite flexible. There were a few hints of self-demanding, but nothing alarming, and I was fascinated by it. Joanna Farrington Hall, née Farrington, she couldn't give up her maiden name, was a stunning woman from a wealthy family. I am Phil Hall, of course, not stunning and not that rich, but relative to myself, I have achieved good results. Decent job and income, many friends and hobbies, life is good. And then I met Joe, and everything got even better. Tall, with long, straight blonde hair, pale skin, and a graceful English appearance, Joe commands attention. Her blue eyes seem as alive as her personality, always darting around, but with an intense gaze. She is smart, determined, and well aware that she influences most males, but she knows how to deflect unwanted attention. No one was as shocked as I was when she asked me out. I just couldn't understand it. She was clearly out of my league, and I told her so. I'm sick of all these rich, arrogant assholes messing with me. You look different, maybe kinder, and I see that you often smile and joke with your friends. I like it. Next time you'll tell me that I'm a nice guy, and that's not the best reason for a date. She laughed, and she had me in her arms, that smile and eye contact. There was no way I could resist her, and she knew it. I literally lost my breath. I had to concentrate on breathing, and it felt like my heart was about to jump out of my chest. Despite my doubts and the fact that it was very early, I began to think that everything could work out. Joe was truly pleasant company and also very attractive. She worked a lot on her appearance, dressed in designer clothes, used the services of a personal trainer, visited spas and beauty treatments. In general, she spared no expense. And it worked. She continues to look even better in adulthood. Our engagement was going smoothly until an incident happened with an old family friend and her ex, Richard Askew. I caught Joe meeting him for drinks. They seemed to be quite close friends, and he held her hands over the table. I was about to leave, but then I thought, screw it, and walked over, sitting down on the chair next to them. Well, that's nice. Joe's eyes widened, and she removed her hands from the table. It's not what you're thinking. I was explaining to Richard that we were now engaged, and I couldn't date him again. In fact, then the only thing that confuses me is that you are holding hands and those loving eyes. Maybe it's just the wrong time and you didn't have a chance to leave me first. No, I swear. Now Richard is just a friend. I needed to explain everything personally, to do everything right. I love you and want to marry you. I looked at Richard. What can you say in your defense? He seemed in no hurry to answer, the self-confident bastard. Joanna is absolutely right. I asked her out without knowing she was engaged, and I'm glad she thinks highly enough of me to explain everything in person. I don't want to come between you. The words made sense, but I didn't like something about him, and he continued, I think I'd better leave you two to sort out your differences. Honestly, I wish you both the best. And also, Phil, you had a 1 in a million chance. You are a very lucky guy. Joe looked at me. Sorry, I should have told you that I was dating him. Are you telling me the truth, Joe? If it's not me you want, then it's better to sort things out now. You are all I need, please. You don't have to worry about anything. I'm all yours. Joe seemed determined to make amends in the bedroom, and I wasn't going to complain, even embellishing my experience a little because I liked the way she was making amends. There was a week left before the wedding, and I was already starting to get tired of the fact that I really was lucky. Only my mom seemed to think I was a good deal for Joe, too. It wasn't the remarks themselves that bothered me so much as the fact that Joe seemed delighted by them. I was hoping to get at least some kind of protection or support, maybe a hint that she was lucky too or that I was a great guy, but it didn't come. Our conversations became more and more one-sided, and more attention was paid to her. At first I chalked it up to wedding stress. However, much of this was stressful for me too. My initial proposal for a small celebration with close friends was rejected out of hand. The wedding went beyond our original plans and budget, but she had to have the perfect dress, the perfect venue, and the cake, and the ring, and her second cousins had to be added to the guest list, which at that point numbered nearly 270 people. I seemed to get lost in the shuffle. I was often instructed, but usually ignored. I wondered if it would be noticeable if I just didn't show up, and I thought again about why she was marrying me. Despite all my fears, I still came, and the wedding went just fine, right down to the speeches. Her father's speech was more like a lecture addressed to me about how I should support my princess in the way she was used to. Her mother smiled at the same time. But I didn't. I really didn't expect the welcome to the family speech. Joe noticed the look on my face and stood next to me. And I would like to drink to the fact that our two wonderful families will be united by the love that Phil and I share. She gave her father a scathing look as she sat back down. At least I wasn't the only one who felt disapproval. The rest of the day passed without incident. After a whirlwind honeymoon, we settled into married life, and 18 months later our first, and as it turned out, only daughter Jade was born. And she was an absolute miracle to me. Joe struggled with postpartum depression and was determined that she would never go through the trauma of childbirth again. As a result, she declared that Jade would be our only offspring. Joe knew that I always wanted to have more children, but I decided not to have the conversation because she wasn't handling motherhood very well. I did everything I could, taking upon myself about, part of the worries. When Jade turned 8, Joe wanted to go back to work. Her father was well-connected and got her a job raising funds for a charity. It was only later that I learned that the chief executive of this charity was Richard Askew. She had been working there for over a year when I was invited along with other partners and families to a summer social event. This year, it had a medieval theme with games and fundraising events for the charity. Most were dressed in fancy dress, the most popular being knights and ladies of the manor. To Joe's disappointment, I avoided participating in this event. She bought a Lady of the Manor outfit with an embroidered tunic, velvet headdress, bowler hat, and silk veil. There were all sorts of games, mock hand-to-hand combat with fake weapons and electronic sensors, knocking each other off logs over the water, and archery competitions. Richard won the mock fencing tournament. Only 4 people could ride well enough to compete. They used foam spears, which were nonetheless quite heavy, and managed to land several hits on the electronic shield sensors. They even managed to get one guy off his horse, although it looked like he would have fallen anyway. To be honest, it was all funny and fun. Then, in front of everyone, Richard approached Joe and asked her for a small souvenir. She took off her veil and tied it to his spear, receiving applause. After that, flirting began before my eyes. I was unhappy that Joe was spending so much time with her boss, so I told her off. "What the hell are you up to?" She laughed. "I don't know. The young knight won my favor." "This is not funny, Joe." "Come on, Phil. Aren't you going to fight for your damsel in distress? Save her from a young scoundrel with a bad reputation?" "I shouldn't do this. And you don't look upset at all. On the contrary, you like it. We are married, and I thought we were committed to each other." "Calm down. It's just a joke." "Is it true? You two turned on each other, and it makes me wonder what else you might be doing at work." With these words, I left, and if I hoped that she would follow me, I was sorely mistaken. I left the hall without the slightest idea of where to go. When in doubt, find a pub, and I spotted one called Farmer's Rest and thought it would do just fine. I sat in the bar, still angry, drinking my first pint. By the second, I thought my reaction might have been a little over the top, but that was because it was him, Richard Askew, always staying in the background. I tried to think about what I should say to Joe when I got home, but as it turned out, I didn't need to worry. Joe wasn't there. It's scary to think where she could be, but all my SMS remained unanswered. She returned after midnight, but did not speak to me. I was determined not to ask where she was. The next day, we just murmured something in greeting to each other at lunch. That evening, Joe announced that we needed to talk, and I laughed. "Why are you laughing?" "Yes, it's simple." Joe ignored my words and continued. "No one, including you, has the right to control me. I admit that since we started working together, I have become closer to Richard again. I don't know what I expected, but certainly not this." "Did you have sex with him?" "Don't be so rude. We have a history together. He was always partial to me." "So, have you already had sex with him?" "Stop saying that. I have to be honest and say that the attraction is mutual." "Have you already had sex with him? You are such a child." I looked at her silently, incredulously. "You left me at a charity event. He was next to me when you weren't there. Oh my God, you've got to be kidding. If you hadn't run away, this would never have happened." "Oh, I doubt it, Joe. I think spreading his legs was inevitable for him. One quarrel and you jump into his bed, and you have the audacity to accuse me that it is my fault that you became a traitor." "I am not a traitor." "Then what's the matter? Is it love? Are you leaving me for him?" "No, of course not. I love you." "What then is a one-time mistake? You feel guilty. This doesn't mean anything. You only love me, it's just sex. What kind of bullshit excuse are you making up? There's no need to react like that. It was a mistake. We quarreled and I was upset. Forgive me. Okay?" "No, it's not okay. And you managed to, quite successfully, get into this situation in order to justify yourself. Why tell me about this now? I wanted to be honest and see if we couldn't work things out. I think it's more like you wanted to throw it in my face. You're right about the fact that everything needs to be sorted out, first by getting a divorce. You cannot divorce me. You have no evidence of infidelity, no videos, no tapes, no photographs. What makes you think that I need them? In this country, when people don't want to be married, they can just get a divorce. This can even be done via the internet, without lawyers. There is no need to prove who had sex with whom. There is no difference. I don't even know if there are investigators here. On the other hand, we also don't have alienation of affection lawsuits in this country, which is also a good thing, otherwise your precious charity could go under, and then what will the poor animals do? Not to mention Richard and his hefty salary. We won't get a divorce because of this episode. Don't even think about it. If you want to see Jade again, our family has more than enough money to trick you. I looked at the consequences of the divorce. It was a nightmare. Even if I win joint custody, I will be left with absolutely no money and will live in a box with, hopefully, real walls. How wrong I was about lawyers. Before I knew it, her father's firm had already sent us for a consultation. What it is. Nowadays, people cannot make a decision without the help of either a consultant or a lawyer or both. Forget about thinking for yourself. And one more thing. Why should I move out? Because it was you who had an affair. It wasn't a romance, and I need time to find myself and understand what I want. Find yourself? Really? I thought the problem was that Richard caught you with your legs spread. This won't help, Mr. Hall. Dr. Taylor allowed a slight frown to appear on her usually stoic face. Joe intervened during a pause in the conversation. That's not the point. I want you, but I don't know if you can survive it. I'm not content with having to apologize for the next 40 years. Did you apologize? I mean, I've heard the word sorry, but not once have you said it convincingly. Oh, grow up, I apologize, and we have to move on. For me, there was no remorse or recognition of the consequences. You can't see beyond yourself. If you have any regrets, it's only about yourself, about not living up to your own standards, about Joanna Farrington Hall being a cheater. You don't worry about me except by dictating the terms for us to stay together. You just want to play the victim because I hurt your pride. Maybe this is so. Your cheating definitely hurt me, pride and all. But more than that, I can't accept the fact that the one who should care about me more than anyone else actually doesn't care that much. For God's sake, it was just one time, just sex that doesn't mean anything. I was angry with you. Great, you left us for something meaningless. This is even worse, and I don't know if it was just one time. You could have sex with him for months. How dare you? If you can't trust me, then we're screwed, and we can end it here. Actually, that's a good idea. A very good one. That's the first thing you said. That makes sense. What? Can't you be serious? I got up and went out. What are you doing? Don't you dare leave me. It's still a matter of control for you, isn't it? Well, you don't control me. I'm free to leave this room, and I'm free to leave you. Phil, don't you dare leave. Phil, I was waiting for a call from Dr. Taylor after I didn't show up for my next appointment. Mr. Hall, I'm clarifying about our session today. I won't come, Dr. Taylor. I thought so. Mr. Hall. Phil, strictly off the record, there are some aspects of your wife's personality that you should be careful with. Do you mean something else besides betrayal? She has some narcissistic traits. She will never forgive you for what she did. Nothing you do will be right. Beware of parental alienation. It's worth reading about. The conversation ended abruptly. I started reading. What I discovered horrified me. The traits described seemed to suit Jo, especially her sense of self-worth and superiority. The lack of empathy, the need for attention, criticizing others and not accepting negative feedback, all struck me. I realized for the first time that I might lose Jade completely. Parental alienation describes the psychological manipulation of a child against the other parent. Basically, Jade could be brainwashed and isolated from me, and that wasn't an option. The long-term effects on the child and some of the case studies are heartbreaking. Legally and financially, I would lose. None of the ideas of separation and revenge looked viable in the cold light of day. I am not a former soldier, an expert in the field of information technology, and have no friends in the lower strata of society. I am an ordinary person who finds himself at the mercy of the court and the system. Is there any way I can avoid losing everything? And then I had an epiphany. Well, not exactly an epiphany, but a vague idea that I could stay with Jo and raise Jade together. She's almost 10, so I need another 6 years. I don't need to be in love with Jo, and in my mind, I don't need to be faithful to her anymore. So maybe it will be an arranged marriage. I'll be much better off financially. I just need to stay friends for a few years, and I'll eliminate the possibility of losing Jade. After Dr. Taylor's warning, I was really worried about what might happen if I wasn't around. Jo begged me to give her one last chance to explain everything, but I refused unless she promised to stop blocking my access to Jade after moving in with my mom. She refused to do this and insisted that there would be no problems with access, so I reluctantly went to our old house. Let's just sit down and clarify the situation. The truth is that I always needed something more, and if it weren't for Richard, sooner or later it would have been someone else. Why then did you marry me? It's obvious. I love you, idiot. Thanks to you, I'm happy, safe, and content. I get along with people, have a lot of energy, and love attention. I need you, but I also need something else. And what you want is Richard Askew. Not necessarily. He's not bad in bed, but I can leave him if that's what's bothering you. I know you don't like him. Of course, if you leave me in less than 30 minutes, he will be here. He has always been in love with me. Wow. Now you have shown yourself in all your glory, so ruthless. Maybe you deserve each other? This doesn't have to be the end of us. Look at me. You won't find anyone better than me, and I will take care of your every need. But do you want to have sex with other guys? No need to be so rude. Talking to Richard reminded me exactly what I was missing. I would like to be more open with you, but I was afraid of losing you. It doesn't have to happen often, and I can be discreet. We were both silent for a long time. The consequences of the divorce made me think about them. I can come back if we open our relationship. Joe didn't expect such a comment and looked shocked, but then a smile appeared on her face. Fine, baby. I can be your hot wife if you want to be in on it. You can watch, or I can tell you all about it. Maybe it will help you understand. That's not exactly what I meant. I don't want to hear about what you're doing. I would like to swap with other couples. Why on earth would you do that when you have me? Maybe it's my innate sense of justice, but on the other hand, it will give you the extra emotion you seem to crave. She looked down at her body, spreading her thighs slightly in her tight skirt. But baby, I don't want to share with you. You don't need anything other than this. I knew I needed to appeal to the part of her that yearned to be worshipped. Just imagine all the guys you can enjoy with. They will be desperate to sleep with such a beauty like you. You will be the center of attention, and they will do whatever you want. I realized that she liked this idea even more than her desire to control me, so I continued with my Hail Mary, last chance plan. This is the only way we can stay together, and there are several other conditions. You will need to be tested for STDs before I touch you again, and any dates will strictly involve the use of condoms. No non-consensual games, and to find other like-minded people, we will join the site. And one more thing, leave Richard and never meet him again. You're right, I can't stand him. Joe rejected the idea and made a fuss, at one point even accusing me of trying to cheat. I suppressed my laughter, knowing that she simply did not understand the irony, and asked if she had already submitted her resignation letter. This is not a negotiation, Joe. It's either this or I'm just leaving. Joe reluctantly agreed. She saw how adamant I was, but no doubt she thought that sooner or later she would find some way to get around me. She also quit, saying that Dad had found her another position, and vowed that she would never see Richard again. I wasn't naive enough to believe her completely, but it was a concession from which I expected more resistance. I signed up for several open couples sites and was amazed at the number of responses. The photo of Joe in an elegant evening dress attracted the attention of all ages more than the semi-nude photos in other profiles. We moved on to correspondence with several couples online. The first couple we actually met were Dave and Gail. The meeting was normal. They were a little younger than us, very fit and attractive. Dave was very interested in Joe, but I didn't like Gail, and we left the meeting as an interesting evening, much to Joe's disappointment. At one point, we exchanged short kisses. Joe seemed excited when I kissed Gail, although her kiss with David was longer and more exciting. After that, I selected couples based on the wife's profile. I wasn't too worried about what Joe would get. To be fair, most of them were on par with their partners, but not always. Every month or so, we met up with other couples, not always for sex. As a rule, the men were wonderful, and their wives were very attractive. The ages ranged from 20 to 40, with different appearances and personalities. I certainly had a lot of fun dating. Joe's loyalty no longer mattered to me, and she enjoyed the attention of new men. This continued intermittently for several years. In normal life, Joe's behavior improved slightly, and his complaints decreased. She knew I would leave if she returned to her old ways, and an uneasy truce would develop between us.